Let's talk incorporating businesses for real estate investors. I'm George Duby, saving the world from tax, one bow tie at a time. When should I incorporate my real estate business? Real estate investors often have in their mind that they have to have some threshold or milestone that has to be reached before they incorporate, before it makes sense. I'd like to put a twist on that and suggest it probably will make more sense to consider, where am I going, not where am I today. And so if over the next 3-ish, 5 years, I'm going to be acquiring real estate, and I don't mean equity, but the value of the real estate itself, roughly $1.5 million or greater, I'm much more likely to be wanting to get into that incorporation process. If I already have an active business, for example, so maybe I'm a professional, maybe I've got a corner store, I'm selling or servicing widgets of some type, I'm much more likely to want to use another corporation. And a large part of that comes down to, if I know, or I'm pretty confident that at some point down the road, I'm going to have a corporation, it's normally much cheaper and easier, less flags for Revenue Canada, less flags and aggravation from a financing perspective, if I incorporate on the first property as compared to after I hit a certain milestone. The cost of transferring properties, while we do it all the time, is something that can be avoided if we do it right the first time. What are one of the primary mistakes that real estate investors fail to think about when deciding whether to incorporate? And give a lot of thought. And here's where I think a lot of people go sideways to what happens down the road. In other words, if we're just measuring on day one, maybe the corporation is worse. But now let's consider, well, down the road, I might be in a retirement mode, or retirement in a semi-fashion. Or my spouse, they may do the same. Maybe both of us will always be in a high tax bracket, and instead, we're looking to the next generation or the generation thereafter. Should I set up a 3-tier structure? Again, a common question that we receive that's now starting to disappoint me. And the reason for that is that type of structuring was something even myself, no question, absolutely, used to recommend on a very, very regular basis. But that changed several years ago. Revenue Canada introduced rules that effectively, for, in particular, long-term hold real estate investors, created a double tax by setting up this 3-tier structure. And if you're not aware, while there's different versions of what a 3-tier structure is, it normally involved at least a parent company owning one or more subsidiary companies. And the concept at the time was marvelous. It worked like a charm. That was several years ago. And I have very few clients that like paying tax the first time. They certainly don't like it the second. So I think it's now time to admit, in the vast majority of cases, for long-term hold real estate investors and others, but not all, that 3-tier structure has now been replaced, really, in my mind, by a completely different structure. Can incorporation for real estate investors be a DIY project? Yes. And as real estate investors, perhaps we are a little bit preconceived to the concept that do-it-yourself projects are great. They help save money, and we're learning as a part of the process. Knowledgeable real estate investors also know many do-it-yourself projects are great ways of costing us a lot of time and money that we didn't have or would rather allocate elsewhere. It is extremely rare, not impossible, but extremely rare when I come into a situation where someone has previously set up their own corporation, they've bypassed the lawyers and tax advice, they've quote unquote saved a few bucks. By the time the legal team and my tax team have fixed things, I can assure you it was much more expensive as compared to had we the opportunity to do things right the first time. Who should you talk to when considering the incorporation process? Most professionals will be in agreement. It's probably easiest to start with the tax advisor, seeing what makes sense from that perspective in your particular situation. Normally, then we're talking to the legal advisors. I also like to talk to the finance professionals. How is this going to impact current or future acquisitions or refinancings from their side, depending on how we've put things together? If I've already got some properties, this will even be more critical. But it's not I can talk to one person and kind of find the magic solution. It's a team environment. And I think it also helps talking with other investors that have been there successfully. This can be a bit more challenging, as at times I appreciate there are quite a number of investors that have a lot of experience, but quite frankly, they have a lot of experience at doing it incorrectly. So scout around. Don't rely, I would suggest, on just one source. Check out the team. Thanks for watching, considering all the different aspects of whether or not to incorporate your real estate investment business. And again, it's summary in nature. There's a lot more to it that will also be dependent on your particular situation. Have more questions? Please subscribe, follow, and even share. I want all of us to have the tax information we need to do wonderful things.